Amen. So some of you have seen this marvelous coffee cup that Brian gave to me. Thank you, Brian. Love it. It says, "Be careful or you will end up in my sermon." So I just want you to know that this sermon today is that, right? It's the product of a conversation at coffee hour after worship. So things happen at coffee hour, and good conversations lead to sermons sometimes. For many years, I took students to the border, USC students, to experience the humanitarian crisis happening there. And one of our stops was always at a monastery of nuns in Tucson. And just inside the front door of this monastery is a beautiful mosaic with the words in Latin that says, "Ora et labora," right? Prayer and work. Ora et labora. A simple reminder that these two things go together. Prayer without action in the world is hollow. Labor without meaning is soulless. The mosaic invites meditation on how to put them together, how to find meaning or make meaning in the work we do to make a living. To earn their daily bread by labora, so that they could engage in the ora of 5 times a day prayer, the nuns made communion bread for Catholic churches and also made vestments for priests. Also craft items for their wonderful gift shop that they had at the front of the building. They didn't really find meaning in their labor, they made meaning in their labor and through it, by honoring each other's contributions, seeing their labor as part of their spiritual vocation. And you know, that's something missing in a lot of the work that we do in our jobs, in our economic system. Not that many employers make any real honest effort to make the work of their workers meaningful. In Marx's language, we live in a system in which a lot of labor is alienated from the means of production. And you don't have to be a Marxist to see the truth in this, right? Too many workers become cogs in the machine of the business in which they labor, disconnected in any meaningful way from the benefits to society produced by the work that they do. Now workers will get financial incentives, they'll get practical incentives to work hard, to work longer, to work better, but often efforts by bosses to offer spiritual, moral, or emotional incentives to work have a way of backfiring, don't they? They come across as insincere and dishonest all too often. Not always, but very often. Religion has been abused for this purpose far too often. Slaves, obey your masters. You know, you can kind of extrapolate from that, right? You know, employees, obey your bosses, from St. Paul. And by extension, religion, specifically Christianity, has been twisted and distorted into a cudgel used to keep workers locked into systems that oppress them. In the 1950s, an unholy alliance was formed between industrialists and evangelical Christians. And the idea was to intentionally and systematically make Christianity an engine of support for the capitalist system during the McCarthy anti-communist era. It was cynical, it was also very well-funded propaganda campaign that marked the beginning of the religious right in America, which has debased the Christian faith as a consequence. And again, to riff off of Marx's language, the religious right in this country has alienated Christians from the means of their spirituality. Yeah? No wonder that those churches are losing so many members today. So heavens forfend if I say anything today that sounds like using religion to make people feel better about the economic system that they labor under. But there's a difference between condoning economic oppression and inequality and finding meaning and making meaning in the work that we do and the system in which we find ourselves. As you have figured out by now, I'm a big fan of Simone Weil, the 20th century philosopher theologian. She had a lot to say about this subject. In her earlier years, she got deep into radical politics. She was attracted to Marxism and decided to be a proletarian. So she went, here's this philosopher from the Sorbonne, this high-level intellectual, trying to be a proletarian. Didn't go very well. She was a total klutz, useless in a factory, right? Just couldn't do it. So she flunked out of the proletariat, you might say, and also began to question Marxist dogma along the way. But she did think very deeply about labor and the plight of a lot of workers. That mattered to her a lot and had a lot to say about it. So I'm going to give you a few quotes from her, which I think are really pretty pithy to get us thinking about this whole topic. One that really struck me, the relationship, this quote, the relationship between the body and the tool changes during apprenticeship. We have to change the relationship between our body and the world. Whoa, deep. Okay, have any of you experienced this with any kind of tool? Any kind of tool. Even musical tools, musical instruments. Kitchen tools, carpentry tools, anything, plumbing tools. And that at some point your relationship to this tool that you use all the time changes from being a separate object to being just part of your body. It's so part of you, it becomes part of you. Your relationship to it changes in a profound way. Part of your body, an extension of your mind. Then you're one with the work in that experience. It's a profound thing that people report who work with their hands. My only experience of it is typing, right? I'm a writer, as you know. And sometimes Roberta, my wife, will ask me, what are you writing about? And I tell her, I say, I can't tell you, but I feel it in my fingers. I know it's gone down to my fingers, and it's going to come through the keyboard. I literally can, that is the best description I can give to the sensation. My fingers know what's about to happen. I can't, the rest of me can't tell you out loud what it is. Only my fingers can tell. Strange sensation, but very real for me. The carpenter gets to the point where the chisel knows where to go, the draw knife knows how to move, and the hammer knows how hard to strike. And there's a spirituality in this when we become one with the work we're doing. And Simone Weil saw that as a bridge or an opening into being one with the cosmos itself, one with God, so to speak. That connection with where we cease to be separate from the world in which we live. She says, an apprenticeship is necessary. To limit one's love to the pure object is the same thing as to extend it to the whole universe. To change the relationship between ourselves and the world in the same way as through apprenticeship, the workman changes the relationship between himself and the tool. Again, this flow state that we get into when the tool becomes part of the body and the work becomes a pathway into union with the cosmos. She wrote about monotony. She had enough brief but pithy experience doing monotonous factory labor to experience that and have some sense of what it's like for workers. She says, monotony is the most beautiful and the most atrocious thing. Both. the most beautiful if it is a reflection of eternity, the most atrocious if it is the sign of an unvarying perpetuity. It is time surpassed or time sterilized. You know, so much of our work life is indeed monotonous. Yeah? In all sorts of fields of work, doing the same thing over and over and over again. And Simone Weil is inviting us to redeem this monotony as a bridge into the sublime experience of eternity in the now. I still laugh when I remember a moment years ago when I was working with homeless folks, and one of the projects I got started was an organic vegetable garden for and by homeless folks, who and then we would take the food from that, and that was part of our meal program for the homeless. And it was a great thing. The guys on the street loved gardening. It was a good thing for the soul and the mind and the body. But we had to set up the garden first to get it ready, and we had volunteer crews come in to help with that. And one group was a group of Buddhists, a Buddhist Sangha. I think almost all of them were white Silicon Valley nerds, anyway, that were into the Buddhism thing. And I found one guy, he was taking rocks out of the garden and putting them into a bucket. And he was counting the rocks as he threw them into the bucket. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Doing his Buddhism while getting rocks out of the garden, right? 1 rock at a time, 1, 1, 1, now. Using this work this monotonous work, physical work, as a pathway into a fuller experience of the present moment, of 1, 1, 1, now. Simone Weil, quote, "To work in order to eat in order to work. If we regard one and the other, or the other taken separately, we're lost. Only the cycle contains the truth. A squirrel turning in its cage in the rotation of the celestial sphere, extreme misery and extreme grandeur. It is when people see themselves as squirrels turning round and round in the circular cage that if they don't lie to themselves, they are close to salvation." Oh yeah, who has not thought this thought? You know, I drive my car to work so that I can make money to pay for my car payment so that I can drive to work. I go to work so that I can have money to pay my rent, so that I can have a place to sleep, so that I can recover from working, so that I can wake up in the morning and go back to work again. You know, we've all thought this thought in our working lives. Oh, at least a couple times, right? And this is one of those rabbit holes you can go down that will really make you depressed. Or you connect that with the way the cosmos works, right? We live in a cosmos of cycles. Things come around. We keep going around the sun. The moon has its cycles. Circles, you know, it's endless circles that go round and round. And if we look at our work lives as part of that cycle, then we see that we're part of this. And there's, you know, there's a certain beauty in that. It's a pathway by which we can step back and have a sense of humor about it, and also even a sense of awe at the way these cycles turn. Cycles of which our cycles are microcosms. She said, workers need poetry more than bread. Well, I don't know about that. I think we need bread, yeah. I think the workers I know would, you know, give me the bread, you know. We'll talk poetry maybe some other time. I don't take this literally, only poetically. Workers need bread. Usually they need more bread than they're getting from their work. But workers also have a need for deeper meaning in the work and in our lives. In the myth of Jesus' temptation in the desert, the devil tells him, he sees that Jesus is hungry out there in the middle of nowhere, says, take this stone, you can turn, you have the power, you can do it. You've got the power, you can take this stone and you can turn it into bread and eat it. And Jesus' answer was, one does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God. Divinely poetic words that feed the soul with meaningful connections, creative interpretations, and intriguing perspectives about everyday life. That gives meaning in our work. That creates meaning in our work. Poetry, literature, music can imbue the everyday with that meaning. Up until the 20th century, the cigar factories in Cuba and Florida, hundreds of people lined up doing this repetitive work, chopping tobacco and rolling it in these sweltering buildings in humid Florida and Cuba. And the workers came up with something to deal with this problem, the poetry need. So they would appoint members of their workforce to be lectors. And the lector would go up in front of everyone and read books out loud to the cigar workers. Isn't that great? And the company wouldn't pay for this, so the workers would pitch in. So, you're losing hours of rolling cigars. It's piecework at the time. You're losing money that way, so that the workers pitched in to cover the pay of the person who was doing the lecturing that day. And this is... Yeah, the original Audible. Thank you very much. Isn't that cool? Lectors in cigar rolling factories. This one, it was a big deal for these workers, right? It brought meaning, poetry, if you will, literally poetry, to their lives and to their work. This went on until the lectors started reading radical political literature to the workers, and that resulted in strikes, which then resulted in the company saying, no more lectors, phooey on that. Years ago, another spring break trip I used to lead for students was to the strawberry fields of Watsonville and Salinas. And this is when I was working at Stanford. I did it once also at USC. And one of our stops was to visit a couple of guys who had been sharecroppers. Now you say sharecroppers in the 21st century? What? It's still going on, people. This thing that was a very oppressive system in the South after the Civil War continues. And anyway, these folks were trying to move on from sharecropping and have a higher level of independence, but it was tough going for these guys. So these two Hispanic farm workers, the dad who couldn't speak English, his son was translating for him. And we stood there in the strawberry fields, myself, my students, and these two gentlemen. And at first, these two fellows were kind of down, like looking down as they talking about how hard their journey has been, because it's been tough. Trying to step out of poverty and into a higher status has not been easy. So they're sharing their trials and travails, and my students kept asking them questions. My students are taking notes. Stanford students take notes. USC students just kind of go, hi. The difference between Northern and Southern California. Funny to watch. Anyway, so my students were nerding out with notes and intently listening to these gentlemen, asking them questions. And the more questions they asked, and the more the time went on, their chins went up. Yeah, like that. And their voices got stronger because they knew they were being respected, right? And that the struggles they were going through were meaningful to somebody else besides them, right? Wow. And after we parted ways with these gentlemen, I looked at my students and they were weeping, because they could see the change. They could see what had happened to these men. All we did was listen, right? All we did was honor their stories. We all need that, yes? All of us need that. Your life matters, your work matters. Your work matters. If it's honorable, honest work, we need the work and we need the fruits of that work. And we all need the respect that should follow from that work. And if nobody else is doing the respecting, if nobody else is honoring it, let the church be a place where that happens. Yes? Where we honor each other's labor, thank each other for each other's labor, and realize that we do not live by bread alone. Amen.